Here's Brody Brazil.
I'm just going to begin this video with my personal preference on the entire situation. Optimally, everything would have went through and got done. The stadium that the Rays proposed, it was approved by the city and the county. All the hard parts had taken place, and all the Rays had to do was just jump in on what they suggested in the first place. Yes, I understand there was a 2-month delay, and certainly costs and inflation and other things have changed along the way, but this is what the Rays had pitched all along, and now they're backing out of it. And so because of that, things are not more simple, they're not more stable, they're a lot more volatile and complicated. Everything we know basically went in a blender. You throw in even Orlando now in that blender and several other unstable elements. You hit go on the blender, and that's where everything is right now. It's all spinning around. Who knows how this is all going to shake out? So that's the purpose of this video, to kind of sift through 5 distinct possibilities. Some of these have more likely outcomes than others, but I do want to explain maybe everything that's on the table right now for the Rays, at least from my perspective, and how I could see things possibly going. Number one, and this kind of seems like what the Rays are suggesting and aiming for right now, staying at the TROP. They've ditched the new stadium plans. They realize that the temporary situation in Steinbrenner Field, it should not be forever, although we will get to that option in just a second. Going back to the TROP is what their current preference seems to be. This means, in my opinion, that the team would not be sold. This is one hypothetical outcome. And again, of all these different outcomes, I'm going to name 5. There could be slight variables with each along the way, but the way I see this, the team would not be sold. Stuart Sternberg would try and put them back at Tropicana Field, but here's a problem. This requires almost $60 million and work to begin almost immediately. They want to be back, they say, by the start of the 2026 season. We also know that repairs not only are going to cost that much, and that money's going to have to get approved by the city of St. Petersburg, but work has to start immediately. Even in a best-case scenario, it's going to take some time to fix up that structure, which right now has no roof. It is protected from the elements, but I mean, the summer months are going to hit, and thunderstorms and rain showers, and there's a lot of work to be done to fix up that facility. So none of that, from my understanding, is actually right now moving forward. That is kind of a big complication in all of this. You can't just go back to the TROP, like snap your fingers and it's done. It's not going to work that way. The Rays, according to the Tampa Bay Times in a report, the Rays are possibly suggesting that everybody chip in $200 million to upgrade Tropicana Field, and then to ultimately stay there another 10 to 15 years. So $600 million total from the team, the city, and the county, and they would maybe sign a new lease of 10 to 15 years and stay there for, I don't want to say the long term, but the midterm, which is interesting, right? Because you would have thought after all of this, they wouldn't be in on the TROP, that the Rays would ultimately want to move to that new home and that new destination, whether it be in Tampa or St. Pete, Orlando, or somewhere else. But it's interesting that this is what they're maybe aiming towards right now. Again, it does seem more likely that the money to fix Tropicana Field would come if there was the assurance of using it more than just 3 years. I mean, at this point, spending $60 million to use it 3-4 more years seems a bit wasteful. That's going to be very difficult, have a bad look on the city and the team and taxpayers. None of that is going to go over very well. So the outlook for all of this, is this really the option that happens for the Rays and their fan base? Do they just go back to the TROP, a fixed-up TROP, either fixed up temporarily for a couple years or fixed up with renovations for 10 to 15 years? This is not impossible. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm saying it's not impossible. That's my outlook. But also, the reason that this is less likely is because I think only the team wants this. I don't know that the fans want 10 to 15 more years of Tropicana Field. I don't know that the city and the county want 10 to 15 more years of Tropicana Field. The team might only want it because it's the easiest and cheapest thing to do, and it would allow them to bypass the need for selling the team. That's option number 1. Here's option number 2. You just kind of stay in limbo. Now, the Rays have already secured their home for 2025, Steinbrenner Field. They're paying $15 million straight to the Yankees to rent out that minor league stadium, but what about 26 and beyond? I don't know that Steinbrenner Field is going to be an option for next year. Feels like the Yankees are doing this one-time favor and that's it. Like, hey, you're not moving in. You're just staying a couple nights, if you know what I mean. So can the Rays secure other temporary homes in the vicinity. I think they can. There's a lot of baseball fields and complexes. I mean, heck, you could go to Orlando, and we'll talk about that option too. There's a minor league type stadium that's wide open at the Disney complex that they could play at. But could they just stay in limbo and perpetually stay at minor league stadiums if this year goes, I don't want to say well, but well enough so that it's not necessarily a problem? Tropicana Field repairs, I'm telling you, this will be contentious for team history, because of team history, I should say, and because of this owner. It's not just, oh, we're going to give you $60 million and fix up the stadium for you. Now there's a rift, right? The Rays were all in on this deal. Everybody else bought in on it, and then the Rays backed out of it. How do you think the city feels about dumping a lot more money into Tropicana Field? Yes, contractually, they are obligated to do so. And yes, they're the ones that cut back the insurance money, so they're going to be on the hook for it. I should say taxpayers are going to be on the hook. But this is not going to be a feel-good issue to fix up Tropicana Field. And that's why all of this might be forced to happen, that the team kind of has to stay at a minor league stadium if for any reason Tropicana Field just doesn't get fixed. Unfortunately, none of this, like staying in minor league stadiums and bouncing around and being very nomadic, none of this leads to a long-term solution. And that's all we're looking for here. Stability, something concrete, something finite for the future for 30 to 50 years to come. So the outlook on this, and I hate to say it this way, it's more than probable, it's quite likely, based on the team's inability to commit. Now, the $200 million of upgrades that the Rays would have to chip in for Tropicana Field, you'd think that's so minimal compared to everything else they've pitched here. But I'm talking about big dollar amounts, big commitments, big contributions. They've had an inability to commit to something like that to ultimately get it done. And so if you can't do that, well, this is what you get stuck in. You get stuck in this limbo. And that's why I think it's more than possible. It's unfortunately quite likely. Okay, here's another option. The team is sold and the team stays in the Tampa Bay region. Now, whether that's St. Pete or moving to the city of Tampa and the Ybor Harbor site. I keep saying Ybor Harbor. I know people say Ybor City. So whatever your preference is, I'll just say Ybor, and I hope that I'm pronouncing that right. A sale, I think, would likely happen at the pressure of other major league owners, right? Sternberg's not just going to wake up and say, all right, this is too frustrating, this is too stressful, I think I'm backing out of this, I'll bow out. That's not going to happen. The only way a sale is going to happen is if it's peer pressure and almost mandated by other owners across the league, and that message is sent to Stuart Sternberg. So that's the only reason I think why this team would be sold, but also especially if it's sold to stay in the same area where Sternberg wanted to and tried to and still probably hopes to get something done, right? You don't give something away to have it stay here. If it was sold to be moved, that might be a different thing, but I think this is the only way that they get sold and stay is if baseball really pressures Sternberg and says, you got to do this. There's also the fact that when you sell the team, you kind of know what the buying group and their intentions are all about. So maybe in a way, if Sternberg is kind of forced to get out, he might prefer that he sells it to somebody who intends on keeping the team in the area. This likely involves a group already with a plan for St. Pete or Tampa. Again, you're not just going to sell this to somebody and they don't know what they're going to do with it and where they're going to do this baseball team. They're going to come in with a very clear-cut idea. So the selling and staying thing, I'll give you my outlook here. It's possible. I'm not saying it's unlikely. I'm saying it's possible. I don't think it's the most likely thing here, but it also takes so many things going perfect. As in, you would need Sternberg to sell the team, and you'd need him to sell the team to a specific group that already has plans laid out for what to do next. They'd have to have the funding for what to do next and the funding to buy the team and build a stadium and get the approvals from the city and county and work on a brand new deal after the last one literally just fell apart. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes that need to go right for this to happen. It's possible, but this one's going to take a lot of work. Sold and gone. Now, this would be where a sale happens with the kind of pre-approval of moving elsewhere. You don't sell the team to somebody and the buying group is like, wait, baseball says we can't go to Orlando? They're not going to approve this move? If the sale happens to a group outside of the Tampa Bay region, you have to know that it's already been discussed that wherever they want to move that team, And we can talk about other places, but I think this option is more like staying in Florida, specifically going to Orlando. It would have to come with the pre-approval of owners. And I don't mean them taking a vote before the sale. I mean the knowledge that if and when there was a vote, it would go unanimously towards the buying group that they could move the team to Orlando. Yes, I do think that the Orlando Dreamers are the frontrunners here. I specifically can't see the Rays leaving the state of Florida. I want to be honest, and we will talk about an option that does exist for them to go far and wide to some kind of wild options like Utah or Portland or Nashville. More on that in just a second. In my personal opinion, I can't necessarily see the Rays leaving the state of Florida because Orlando's right up the road, because Orlando is a certain option. I don't know that it's the perfect option right now. They don't have everything lined up, like the total dollar amount to buy the team, the total dollar amount to build the stadium, the approvals from Orange County and the city of Orlando, but maybe that comes in time. They're literally just getting started on this. So, in my opinion, Orlando would be the option of sold and gone. And then the Rays turn back and say, when they get asked about what happened about here to stay, what happened to your slogan and everything you were trying to do, and the Rays simply point the finger at St. Pete and the hurricane and the delays and Tropicana Field's destruction and the cost to fix that. Everything is in place for the blame game to happen and for the excuses to happen of why this franchise needed to move to Orlando. Like, everything's laid out for that already to be an easy route. And so the outlook on this, when I say more likely, I don't mean more likely than anything else to happen. I'm just saying more likely and easier than this should be. This situation is more likely and more likely and easier than it should be or needs to be. And so that's why we've been talking a lot about Orlando and the potential. I mean, we got to keep a very close eye on their maneuvers, what they're doing, what they're laying out, how they're going about this situation, how they're trying to pounce right now. Again, I do think that this is a pretty prominent option of the rest. And then the last one here, this one's kind of off the wall. I wanted to include it, even though I think it's far-fetched and maybe less relevant than everything else. How about a shocking move, right? Because at this point, pretty much anything can happen, right? Like we've seen in the last couple of years with teams and relocation and votes and business deals happening and not happening. Maybe baseball influences a sale of the Rays, but instead of saying, all right, Orlando is pre-approved, what if they say, hey, you know what? They kind of do what the NHL did with the Arizona Coyotes. The league comes out, visits ownership, says you need to sell. We're going to buy the team. We're going to kind of middleman the team and sell it to Utah. What if baseball really wants a team to be in Salt Lake City, Nashville, or Portland? And what if the reason is because they know that expansion is not necessarily right around the corner, and they are interested in these cities, and a lot of these cities have a lot of things already in place. I think Utah more than the rest, if I'm being honest. But what if baseball says, we want to be there, but we can't get there, we're not going to expand, so we will allow the Rays to be purchased by one of these places and will help move the team there. This would have to be, by the way, a place, whether it's Utah or Nashville or Portland, this would have to be a place where all of the elements are already secured. I mean, enough money, plenty enough money to buy the team, plenty enough money, public or private or both or whatever, to have the ballpark built, no questions about it. It has to be turnkey in every single element. But this idea, this option, this requires so many other things, logistic stuff that's very difficult, realignment, moving the team halfway across the country. What year do you do that? Do you have a temporary stadium? I will say Utah is set up quite nicely for this. They've got Smith's Ballpark. It's the old AAA ballpark that's now about to sit empty because the Bees have a brand new home that they just built, 30 minutes south of downtown Salt Lake City. They've got a temporary landing spot. They also have $900 million carved out for a baseball stadium of public money as soon as a major league team moves to Utah. And they've got the Larry H. Miller Group, which is very interested in buying a stake at the Major League Baseball team in terms of owning it. So you've got a lot of things already in place. But again, this requires a lot of other moving parts to also happen as well, too. My outlook on this, I will admit, compared to everything else, this does seem extremely unlikely. But all in the same breath, it can't be ruled out 100%. Which is amazing, but it's also like the responsible thing to say. We've seen crazier happen, And so let's see how this shakes out. So those are my 5 possibilities. Now, 6 months, a year down the road, we can revisit this video and say, oh my gosh, he was spot on about one of them. We also might be able to say, oh, you know what, option B or 3 or 2 or 1. It was pretty close. It wasn't exact, but it gave us a pretty good blueprint. So I have a feeling that at the very least, one of the things I just mentioned is the blueprint. It may not be precisely how it happens, but one of the things I just mentioned here will be exactly how it plays out down the road. And by down the road, do we mean 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years? I wish we could get to that spot right now and figure it out. Hey, that's the end of this video. Appreciate you for sticking around. Thumbs up down below. Greatly helps me, this video, and this channel. And don't forget to subscribe. Go down there and hit that button so I can definitely see you back here next time.